Today we're going to be tier ranking both men's and women's Royal Rumble winners. Now the ranking criteria is going to be based on how good the Royal Rumble victory actually was, whether or not we think they were the right person to win that year's Royal Rumble, and how well they performed after winning that Royal Rumble. And when we rank them, we're going to rank them from Hall of Fame all the way down to trash. As always, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications. If you're a wrestling fan, you're going to like this channel because we upload daily wrestling content, and right now, daily wrestling content is what you want because this is basically wrestling Christmas as we go into Royal Rumble season, so make sure you subscribe. Now, before we start, I want to clarify that I'm only including Royal Rumble winners from 2003 to 2023. And the reason I'm doing it this way is because these are the Royal Rumble winners that I got to experience firsthand in the moment as a wrestling fan. And yeah, sure, I have gone back and watched all of the older Royal Rumbles, all of the older roads to WrestleMania. However, it's just not the same because I have the power of hindsight to really critique those. Meanwhile, for Royal Rumble winners from the time that I started watching, what you're gonna get here is first-hand opinions and first-hand experience. And in my opinion, that's the most genuine type of content that you can get. Now, I am open to changing up that strategy in the future, so feel free to leave me some feedback about this in the comments. The comments are a safe place here, even though this is still the internet wrestling community, the comments here are actually pretty chill. All right, let's jump into it. All right, so here are the tiers that we're gonna be working with. We have Hall of Fame, great, good, meh, and trash. Now we're gonna start off with the 2003 Royal Rumble winner, that being the Beast, Brock Lesnar, who back then was being labeled the next big thing. And that's understandable considering in 2002, he had like the greatest rookie year imaginable. He won the King of the Ring. He annihilated Hulkamania. He beat The Rock for the WWE Championship, was the youngest ever WWE champion of all time, defeated The Undertaker. This man was in an absolute roll, and it just made sense to give this guy the Royal Rumble victory. To me, this is one of those situations where it's totally okay for 2 + 2 to equal 4. You don't need to get too crazy, and you don't need some crazy swerve here. Brock Lesnar just made sense, and he was a legitimate main eventer. Now, one of the few things that was missing from this amazing rookie year was the Royal Rumble victory and a WrestleMania main event, and this gave him both. So this Royal Rumble victory really helped cement this as the greatest rookie year in the history of the WWE, a rookie year that I don't think will ever be matched, if I'm being honest with you. Now, the victory sure wasn't one of those like long Iron Man victories where he went from 1 all the way to 30 and 1. It's not one of those. However, it still did the job. Now, the big thing about Brock Lesnar winning this Royal Rumble is that he went on to do wonders as the Royal Rumble winner, challenging Kurt Angle for the WWE Championship, main eventing WrestleMania 19 in Safeco Field in Seattle, having an amazing match. And even after that, he perennially stayed in that main event scene, hunting the WWE Championship. So this truly cemented Brock Lesnar as the top guy in the WWE. So I'm going to be putting this victory into the great category. Next is the 2004 Royal Rumble winner, and that being Chris Benoit. Now, I already alluded to this where I don't like to critique things with the power of hindsight, because if we use the power of hindsight, it's really easy to dismiss this because a lot of people want to erase Chris Benoit from the history books altogether. However, this Royal Rumble victory is impossible to remove from the history books because this was the first time since Shawn Michaels that somebody went the distance. He went from 1 all the way to the very end and won the Royal Rumble, taking out just about every single main eventer that you can think of in that year's Royal Rumble. On top of that, Chris Benoit was this workhorse, so having him win from 1 honestly really suited him very well. Now, he would go on into WrestleMania 20, have that fantastic triple threat match with Shawn Michaels and Triple H. He would win that. He'd get all the confetti, all of the love, all of the adoration. However, what I will say is that after that, I don't think that he was ever really seen as the top star of the WWE. It always just sort of felt like he was this transitional champion, and it was a matter of time before he lost it. And it was, because he would lose it at that year's SummerSlam to Randy Orton, and then the bell would go right back to Triple H and the reign of terror would continue. So it changed nothing actually in the grand scheme of things, and didn't keep Benoit at the top of the card forever, like a Royal Rumble victory ought to, at least. It should really be the thing that cements you as a perennial main eventer. Chris Benoit was in that United States Championship hunt not long after winning the Royal Rumble. So I'll put him into the good category because of the context of the actual victory, but the things that happened after WrestleMania with his victory weren't great. Next up, we have the 2005 Royal Rumble winner, that being the Animal Batista. And this was a crazy Royal Rumble. This is one of my favorite Royal Rumble matches of all time, and the ending sequence may go down as the greatest ending sequence of a Royal Rumble match ever. For those that don't remember or weren't alive around for this time, both John Cena and Batista were the final two, and they accidentally both fell out of the ring at the exact same time, which then prompted Vince McMahon to come out angry, rolling into the ring, legitimately tearing both of his quads off the bone as he just sits there as the world is in complete shock and panic, not knowing who won the Royal Rumble match, only for the referees to restart it, and Batista inevitably finally eliminating John Cena clean. This was so awesome. Honestly, it's so memorable, even if it was a botch, even if it was not meant to be that way, if it wasn't booked that way. It's one of those Royal Rumble moments, those Royal Rumble victories that's going to be replayed until the end of time. Once aliens take over the world and they ask, what is professional wrestling? We're going to show them that moment. This is going to be one of those archive things that we show them. The victory was absolutely fantastic. The storyline that they told afterwards with Triple H trying to deceive Batista into picking JBL and not picking Triple H to go up against him at WrestleMania was absolutely phenomenal. The Batista thumbs down as he takes out Triple H and Ric Flair and fully dissolves Evolution. The WrestleMania match that main evented WrestleMania 21 against Triple H was fantastic. Then his championship reign was friggin' awesome. Only to have to drop the title because of injury, but then he would stay at the top of the card for the rest of his career. The Royal Rumble made Batista. Seriously, he was getting popular, but this made Batista into the superstar that he would become. This one, fellas, that's the Hall of Fame caliber that we're looking for. Hey, if you want even more wrestling content, consider checking out Patreon, patreon.com/SantiZap, where you're going to get even more wrestling content like my NXT, SmackDown, Raw reviews, as well as the Wrestling is Cool podcast 3 days early. And on top of that, you're going to get the monthly mailbag. So go check it out, patreon.com/SantiZap. Nearly 300 of you are already supporting me over there, so I thank you very, very much. Okay, I'm done. Back to the video. Now, next up, we have the 2006 Royal Rumble winner, that being Rey Mysterio, who for a while held the record for the longest instance inside a Royal Rumble match, as he went from the number 2 position all the way to win it and lasted over 60 minutes. Now, the story that they were telling at the time was that, he was doing this in the memory of Eddie Guerrero. He even came out in the lowrider. Honestly, it was impossible for him to not win with the context of the time and the story that they were telling. So it really was a really great emotional victory for him. Now, I do wonder, maybe that wasn't the plan. I'm very curious where they would have gone had Eddie Guerrero not passed away, because I don't think that Rey Mysterio would have been their choice. However, that's the context that they were dealing with. They went with that storyline, and I think that they did a really good job with it. Now, he would then actually lose his opportunity to go face Kurt Angle, the world heavyweight champion at the time, to Randy Orton, only to then be reinserted, and it's now a triple threat. So here's the thing, even though he would go on to win that world heavyweight championship match, he was always just treated like such a weak little bitch. Now, I understand that he's the underdog. He's much smaller than everyone, but there was never a moment where it's just like, yeah, Rey Mysterio's so badass. He just always sort of seemed to get clowned on, even in the championship defenses when he became world heavyweight champion. So I don't think that they did a great job post him becoming world heavyweight champion to really cement him as this like top tier guy. I just don't think that they did a great job with that. Still, the context leading into the Royal Rumble, the Royal Rumble victory itself, where he lasted over 60 minutes, I think is good enough to put him into the good category. Next up, we have the 2007 Royal Rumble winner, that being the Phenom, The Undertaker. Now, Undertaker didn't need this. That's just the honest to God truth. Undertaker could do whatever he wanted. If Undertaker wanted to go on and main event WrestleMania, he didn't need to win the Royal Rumble. Are we mad that he won the Royal Rumble? Hell no, because Undertaker is amazing and he is a legend, and it's cool that he got to have this extra accolade added to his career. What I will say is that this may have the best final 10 minutes to a Royal Rumble match ever. The last 10 minutes of this match were just Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker, which actually ended up being a preview to the WrestleMania 25 and WrestleMania 26 Classic that we would get 2 years later. So keep that in mind, because to me, that really adds points to this, because it was just an amazing match within the Royal Rumble match itself. Now, Taker would then go on to have this really awesome ceremony where he would choose who he would face, where he would have John Cena, Bobby Lashley, and Batista in the ring as he would stare them down, only to inevitably evilly stare down Batista. Then would go on to WrestleMania 23 to have, in my opinion, the best match of that year's WrestleMania, one of Undertaker's best streak match that weirdly doesn't get talked about enough. I think that this is low-key a heater of a Royal Rumble victory. It goes into the great category. Next up, we have the 2008 Royal Rumble winner, the not human John Cena, who had no business being in this Royal Rumble match. To remind you of the context, he had absolutely just annihilated his pectoral muscle. He should have been out for 8 months, and this absolute freak of nature, and I truly mean that as a compliment, came back within 3 months. An absolute Chad mega omega move that John Cena pulled off, coming in as a surprise 30th entrant in Madison Square Garden to a loud, deafening pop. It's one of those moments that a lot of people look back on incredibly fondly and say it's one of the greatest returns of all time. This John Cena return is up there. So to me, that really gives it some extra points. That final sequence that he was in there with the Batistas of the world and the Triple H's of the world, to me also adds to this, because he had to take out some of the biggest heavy hitters in the game at that time. Where this kind of loses me, and where I can't really put it higher than good, is what they really did with it afterwards, which really wasn't all that much. He would go on to actually lose his WrestleMania match in that triple threat match against Triple H and Randy Orton. And, it was kind of status quo for John Cena. He was already a perennial main eventer, the face of the WWE. So the Royal Rumble victory didn't really add anything extra to his career, because he was already at the top of the mountain. So it's tough to give him points in terms of what the Rumble did for him, because it kind of did nothing for him. But it was cool that he came back, and it was cool that he was in there with Batista and Triple H and ultimately winning the whole thing. I'm going to put it into the good category, but it's borderline meh. And I'm the John Cena guy wearing the Cena merch right now. I'll just say that. Next up, we have Randy Orton, who was the top heel in the company, truly dominated that Royal Rumble, as he was flanked by both members of Legacy for a good chunk of this Royal Rumble match. What I like about this Royal Rumble victory for Randy Orton isn't so much what happened in the ring, but more so what happened afterwards, because the storyline that they would go on to tell between him and Triple H leading into WrestleMania 25 is actually an all-timer. It's such a good storyline. It's so heated. There's just so much animosity between them. And I love the fact that we were able to use the Royal Rumble match as a catalyst to get that storyline going, because that storyline was absolutely phenomenal. The match under-delivered, because it had the weird stipulation of if Triple H gets disqualified, then Randy becomes the WWE champion, which is asinine considering these guys wanted to kill each other. You should have just made it a no disqualification match, considering how awesome and heated the actual feud was. And similar to John Cena, in terms of elevating Randy Orton, I don't think this necessarily did. He was already elevated. He was already up there, so can't really give him any more points for that. Honestly, the only reason I'm putting this into the good category is because of how good the storyline that this Royal Rumble victory for Randy Orton ended up being, that storyline between Randy and Triple H. And look, as you're seeing right now, you're seeing that the WWE was kind of on the ball with great Royal Rumble winners for a while there. And I think that this is the last one that we can put into the good category, that being Edge winning the 2010 Royal Rumble match. If you remember, this is a Royal Rumble match where the last few were people like Shawn Michaels, Batista, Chris Jericho, Cena. Like, there were so many monsters of the business at the end of this Royal Rumble, and Edge ended up coming out ahead. So in itself, this is a great Royal Rumble victory for Edge. On top of that, this is a return for Edge as well, where he would return and immediately come after the person that made his life a living hell and injured him in Chris Jericho. And he would go on to face Chris Jericho for the World Heavyweight Championship at that year's WrestleMania. I don't think that the Chris Jericho match was particularly great. I don't think that it stole the show. It wasn't bad, but still, I mean, like, I'm going to take Chris Jericho versus Edge when they're in their primes at any moment, but I do feel like the match didn't necessarily blow anyone's socks off. But still, this is kind of like the last bastion of like solid Royal Rumble winners, because now we're going to go through some rough ones here. Next up, we have the 2011 Royal Rumble winner, that being Alberto Del Rio, who is also the winner of the largest Royal Rumble ever, that being a 40-man Royal Rumble match, even though they should have just kept it to 30 because those extra 10 men that they added were really all jobbers anyway. Here's the thing. This Alberto Del Rio win was just far too rushed. They were trying to do what they did with Brock Lesnar, where they wanted to give Alberto Del Rio this mega push during his rookie year, and it just like was not landing. Here's the thing. I feel like there were better options that year as well. In my opinion, this Rumble should have gone to the leader of the new Nexus, CM Punk. Alberto Del Rio, to me, wasn't even one of the top 5 that should have won it. There were so many other options that were better than him. And then on top of that, he would go on to WrestleMania 27, have an average match with Edge that he would lose, and then try to continue to go after the World Heavyweight title after Edge's retirement against Christian, and then lose. This Royal Rumble victory did absolutely nothing for Alberto Del Rio. Honestly, I was more hyped to see Santino almost win the whole thing than anything else. So it goes into the trash category. Next up, we have the 2012 Royal Rumble winner, that being Sheamus. And look, I love Sheamus. I think Sheamus is fantastic. He's a legend, and he needs to absolutely be beloved. However, he shouldn't have won the 2012 Royal Rumble. That definitely should have gone to Chris Jericho. Everyone and their moms at that moment in time believed that this should have been Chris Jericho's Royal Rumble victory. And frankly, even though Chris Jericho was the last person eliminated, if you look at everything that happened after the Royal Rumble, it was Chris Jericho that was almost treated like the Royal Rumble winner, because he's the one that got the good storylines going into WrestleMania in the marquee match against CM Punk. Meanwhile, Sheamus got a very lackluster program with Daniel Bryan and a match that would only last 18 seconds. This did no favors for Sheamus. Frankly, I think it turned a lot of the crowd on Sheamus, and that's a shame because Sheamus was starting to get super popular as well. Look, the Rumble victory itself was actually pretty good, but everything else outside of the fact that, you know, his performance in the Rumble was pretty good is very meh. Next up, we have the 2013 winner, John Cena. And again, I like John Cena. And even though I do believe that he was the right choice to win it, he was only the right choice by default because the WWE pigeonholed and cornered themselves by forcing John Cena to win to make sure that we would get John Cena versus The Rock. They couldn't think of a more creative way of landing us at John Cena versus The Rock, aside from having John Cena win the Royal Rumble and having The Rock be the champion. Honestly, it was lazy. Even though it was the right choice, it was lazy booking that led to this. The Royal Rumble did not need John Cena to win it, and John Cena did not need to win this Royal Rumble. This did nothing for John Cena. Sure, it added to his legacy as a 2-time Royal Rumble winner, but no, I couldn't get behind this. Look, right winner, still trash. Now we go on to the infamous 2014 Royal Rumble match where the winner would be the returning Batista. Now here's the thing. Before I continue, I want to remind you and everyone at home that you and I all possess this magical superpower. It's a super strong power. It's called the power of hindsight. And if we use the power of hindsight, then you can make the argument that Batista is the greatest Royal Rumble winner of all time, because then it meant that Daniel Bryan had to have this, I guess, perseverance storyline where he forced himself into the main event of WrestleMania, and that was a storyline that really resonated. However, just pretend like you don't have the power of hindsight. There is no reason for Batista to have won the Royal Rumble match. Yes, the WWE absolutely saved themselves, and they absolutely did a beautiful job of retconning this terrible decision by giving us the amazing storyline that was the yes movement of Daniel Bryan. There was no reason for Batista to win that Royal Rumble match. It did Batista himself a ton of disservice because he came back as a babyface, and it forced all of us to hate Batista because he wasn't Daniel Bryan. It was emphatically the wrong choice. Not only did they not have Daniel Bryan win the Rumble, he wasn't even in the Royal Rumble. Asinine. Absolutely terrible. Trash. Oh boy. We're in a nasty stretch right here, fellas. We are in a nasty stretch. We are now into the equally infamous 2015 Royal Rumble match, with Roman Reigns winning and getting booed out of the building. Even though The Rock was out there to raise his hand, no one gave two shits about that because nobody wanted to see Roman Reigns win, and we all collectively hated how the Royal Rumble was booked to make Roman Reigns look like this superhuman. We saw right through this theater act that the WWE was putting in front of us, and all it led to was Roman Reigns getting turned on by the fans. Sure, I think he went on to have a fantastic WrestleMania 31 match with Brock Lesnar, Heist of the Century. I think all of that was very good. Hell, they even made Roman Reigns earn his keep by having him put that championship defense, or I guess championship opportunity, on the line against Daniel Bryan in the pay-per-view before WrestleMania. Still, it never really clicked with the fans that Roman Reigns was just now their guy. Look, there weren't even like real, genuine reasons to not like Roman. I think the reason we just didn't like Roman was because of just how poorly WWE booked him to put him into the position that they were in. I think they were better off having Daniel Bryan win again, or just about shit. So many other people. Bray Wyatt could have been a great option. Sadly, they just did him a lot of disservice. This also goes into the trash category. Next up, we have the 2016 Royal Rumble match, where the winner was Triple H. Now, you have to remember that this Royal Rumble match was for the WWE Championship, and this was a whole storyline about the Authority trying to do Roman Reigns dirty, making him going at number one as the champion to try and retain. And that did... Look, that is problematic in itself because it means that everyone that's in the Rumble that is not named Roman Reigns or Triple H fucking mean nothing. That's kind of what it did. But Triple H coming out at number 30 was supposed to be this surprise evil final boss coming in. It surprised absolutely nobody in the arena. Most people will tell you that they believe that Triple H was not the right winner, that they could have gone a bunch of different ways. A lot of people would tell you that they would have gone Dean Ambrose, helping us set up a Shield triple threat match at WrestleMania, which is something that we never got. Triple H, at this point in his career, did not need a WWE championship. But again, all of this was to help propel Roman Reigns to the top yet again, even though it was just something that the fans continued to push back on. So again, Triple H winning the Royal Rumble, trash. This was a rough decade for Royal Rumble winners, as you can see. 2017 was an interesting one, with the winner being Randy Orton, who was embroiled in a storyline with Bray Wyatt at the time, and it was a storyline that would actually inevitably culminate at WrestleMania. Even though Bray Wyatt was in that year's Royal Rumble and he would not win, he would then go on to win the WWE Championship at Elimination Chamber and defend it against the Royal Rumble winner, Randy Orton, drop the championship belt in a very bad match. Interestingly enough, in my opinion, and in the opinion of a lot of people, even though Randy was in this program with Bray Wyatt, a lot more people believe that it should have been Bray Wyatt to win the Royal Rumble instead of Randy Orton, and do kind of like the opposite end of results and having Bray Wyatt win the championship at WrestleMania. I think that would have been a better option in my opinion. There was also Chris Jericho, who was embroiled in a fantastic storyline with Kevin Owens at this time, the whole Festival of Friendship, the list, culminating in a match at WrestleMania that should have been for the Universal Championship that ended up being for the United States Championship. So there were other options that people liked more than Randy Orton. However, even though I didn't like the actual match at WrestleMania, maybe this is just me, I kind of like the build up to the actual match itself. I kind of dug Randy Orton burning the whole Wyatt compound and doing his Fortnite emote. I like that stuff. Still, it doesn't save it from anything lower than a meh. Next up, we have the 2018 Men's Royal Rumble winner, Shinsuke Nakamura. And in my opinion, this was an absolutely phenomenal choice to go on to win the Royal Rumble match. Unfortunately, even though he was a great option, he was a great winner, he had a great run in the actual match itself, eliminated Roman Reigns, which a lot of us were pretty happy about. They treated him horribly after winning the Royal Rumble match, pretty much cementing him as a jobber with the way that they booked him after the Royal Rumble match. He would go on to lose to AJ Styles at that year's WrestleMania in a very subpar match, a match that many of us were expecting was going to melt our eyeballs, especially if you'd seen their matches before in New Japan. And it unfortunately just did not deliver. And on top of that, they turned him heel in the most cowardly of ways. And yeah, sure, he would have a 1 or 2 more championship opportunities after that, but then immediately after that, he just segregated to the lower mid card. Shinsuke Nakamura was done so dirty after winning the Men's Royal Rumble match, and that is such an absolute shame because he was an absolute crack of an option to actually win the thing. Because I think he was a fantastic choice to win it, this saves it from the trash category, like barely, because he was just treated so poorly after winning the thing. The Japanese dominated that year's Royal Rumble match because next we have Asuka. And Asuka is kind of a similar situation to Shinsuke Nakamura, but nowhere near as bad because similar to Shinsuke Nakamura, she came from NXT Black and Gold, still had that aura about her of being undefeated, being this monster, this scary beast of the women's division that you didn't want to mess with. On top of that, she's going to go down as the first ever Women's Royal Rumble match winner, which is an important thing to know when we go back into the history books. I loved her run in the actual Royal Rumble match itself. I think that she was treated very well leading into the match with Charlotte at WrestleMania. She would lose that match. However, unlike Shinsuke Nakamura, she was actually still treated as a perennial main eventer and stayed a main eventer for the rest of her career. Now, I'm sure she would have gotten there eventually, even without a Royal Rumble victory. However, the Royal Rumble victory really catapulted and made that happen even faster. So I'm going to put Asuka into the good category. Next up, we have Seth Rollins. And a lot of people forget this Royal Rumble. It's a bit of a forgettable Men's Royal Rumble match. Still, I love the fact that they picked Seth Rollins, a workhorse who had been doing just about everything really up to this point. It was nice to see him finally get this opportunity to go on to main event WrestleMania. He still didn't get to main event WrestleMania because Becky Lynch would become the most popular thing in professional wrestling since like Stone Cold that very same year, but I digress. I think Seth was a great option to win this Rumble. I think that they treated him very well. He does suffer from that aspect that he was already pretty much at the top of the mountain, so there wasn't really much farther higher up that he could go. Yet they still somehow found a way to really elevate him. And they did this by having him destroy Brock Lesnar. I mean, he was the Beast Slayer, and he would go on to beat him at WrestleMania and also would go on to beat him at that year's SummerSlam. So they really helped Seth Rollins become this mega babyface with winning this Royal Rumble match. So I'm going to put this into the good category. Becky Lynch winning the 2019 Women's Royal Rumble has to go up an extra notch. I am going to put this into the great category because I like the way that she entered the Royal Rumble match with Lana being injured, her taking that spot, which was a nice little surprise, a really awesome pop when we got to hear her music, her demanding to get put into the Royal Rumble match. So the way that she actually got into the Rumble match was pretty freaking awesome. The win was great. The storyline after that was absolutely phenomenal, and it led to the first ever women's main event at WrestleMania. Hell, I'm kind of borderline on going Hall of Fame here. You know what? I just talked myself into this. I'm going to go Hall of Fame here because of the importance of this Royal Rumble victory and what it meant to women's professional wrestling as a whole. I don't know if we'll see another day where the women main event a second night of WrestleMania now that WrestleMania is 2 nights. But the thing is that Becky Lynch made that not an impossibility. It could happen. And it's really on the back of what Becky Lynch built in 2019 with this fantastic Royal Rumble victory. The men's 2020 Royal Rumble match, the whole thing, might be my favorite Royal Rumble match of all time. It's so fantastic. The choreography of this match with Brock Lesnar being out there at number 1 and eliminating every single human that comes anywhere near the ring was amazing storytelling. And it set up Drew McIntyre for the greatest babyface turn of all time, because he would eliminate Brock Lesnar with a beautiful Claymore kick. He was a heel going into this, instantly biggest babyface in the company. It was absolutely brilliant booking. He would then go on to win the match in a fantastic way nonetheless, and he would go on to unfortunately main event Pandemomania in front of no one. That is not his fault. I am not going to take away points from him. On top of that, Drew McIntyre hadn't touched anything above being Dolph Ziggler's lackey on the main roster. So this Royal Rumble match did what it did for Batista, where it absolutely catapulted and placed him in the main event scene for the rest of his career. It did exactly what a Royal Rumble match is supposed to do with somebody like a Drew McIntyre. Back-to-back Hall of Famers here, fellas. Next up, we have Charlotte winning the 2020 Women's Royal Rumble match. And I'm going to be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of this. And this is somebody that likes Charlotte more than like the average regular WWE viewer. I think a lot of you guys give her too much hate. I think she's great. Still, I think that she should not have won this year's Royal Rumble match. Part of the reason is because she ended up going for the NXT Championship and having a match with Rhea Ripley at that year's Pandemomania, which is cool. However, it's the NXT title. You don't need to win the Royal Rumble match to go after the NXT title. She could have just gone after the NXT title because she wanted to. So part of me like loves the fact that they tried to bring in NXT Black and Gold into the fold. However, I just don't think this was the way to do it. Like, honestly, imagine when Undertaker was staring down WWE Champion John Cena, World Heavyweight Champion Batista, and ECW Champion Bobby Lashley and going for the ECW Championship. It wouldn't have hit as hard. And I think that's part of the reason why this doesn't hit as hard either, and why it's one of those Royal Rumble victories that isn't really, I guess, in the lexicon of people's conversation. So I'm going to put this into the meh category. Next up, we have Edge, who won the Royal Rumble from the number 1 spot, going the distance, eventually eliminating Randy Orton and going on to main event that year's WrestleMania, facing off against Roman Reigns and Daniel Bryan. A WrestleMania main event, which was the return of fans after an entire year without fans because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So that was pretty cool. The Royal Rumble victory itself is hella impressive. Edge, who had been retired for 9 years, who had just come back from like a severe tricep tear. So a lot of things were working against Edge from a physical point of view, and he still managed to put on this ridiculous Iron Man performance in the Royal Rumble match. I personally don't think that he should have won this year's Royal Rumble. I don't think that he was the right choice. Just kind of considering the fact that he wasn't a main eventer, I feel like they should have gone with somebody like Bobby Lashley, who was starting to really start to pick up steam, and they could have maybe done a Batista / Drew McIntyre with Bobby Lashley. Still, the context of things, the great main event match that he would go on to have, the fact that it was a legendary WrestleMania Royal Rumble performance, it does put it into the good category for me. Next up, we have the 2021 Women's Royal Rumble winner, that being Bianca Belair. Now, Bianca Belair, kind of similar to Edge, went almost the distance, coming in at number 3 and going all the way to the end, finally eliminating Rhea Ripley to win that Women's Royal Rumble match. I think that she had an absolutely kick-ass performance at that year's Royal Rumble, and I absolutely believe that she was far and away the best option to win this. Not only that, but then they would set her up in a great program with Sasha Banks, a great program that would main event night one of that year's WrestleMania and be arguably like match of the year. It was fantastic. And similarly to the Batista likes, to the Drew McIntyre types, this served as the cementing of Bianca Belair as a top player in the women's division for the rest of her career. There is no indication that she's going to be getting the Nakamura treatment and getting set down to the mid card or anything like that. This really was the making of Bianca Belair. I have to put this into the great category. Brock Lesnar winning the 2022 Royal Rumble match is arguably the worst decision that they've ever made for the men's Royal Rumble match. Seriously, it is absolutely brutal. Him losing the WWE Championship earlier in the night, only to win the Royal Rumble match, only to then book him to win the WWE Championship and then go into WrestleMania as the champion is absolutely ludicrous. He also came in at number 30, and honestly, you could hear a fart in that entire arena with how just quiet and disappointed people were that Lesnar's music hit. This was awful. Trash. Look, 2022 was clearly a rough year for both the men's and the women's Royal Rumble match because we would have Ronda Rousey win the women's Royal Rumble match that year. A Royal Rumble match that she shouldn't have won, but she did end up winning. And yet for some reason, they didn't have her go up against Becky Lynch, which was the match that we were clamoring for all of those years ago when Ronda Rousey was hot and actually like super popular. And now that she's back, she had lost a lot of that allure. She just wasn't as feverishly hot as she was back then. By the way, when I say that, I don't mean like physical looks. I just mean like in terms of like how popular she was. She just was nowhere near as popular anymore. And yet they still had her go up against Charlotte instead of Becky Lynch. She would even lose to Charlotte. So they did nothing with this, frankly. It's like, oh, cool. They liked Ronda back then. Maybe this will work. It didn't. Trash. Cody Rhodes winning the 2023 Men's Royal Rumble match was predictable, and that's okay. Doesn't have to be a swerve, and it doesn't always have to be a swerve. Sometimes, like I said earlier in this video, 2 + 2 is allowed to equal 4. We don't have to complicate things. And I think it's one of those situations where it just made sense. The returning Cody Rhodes coming in at number 30, not a surprise because in classic WWE fashion, they spoiled that he was coming back. It would have been better had they kept it as a surprise, frankly, but they didn't. They spoiled it. And honestly, the one thing that I wish they hadn't have had him do is eliminate Gunther, because Gunther went all the way from number 1 to the very end, and having number 30 be the babyface and number 1 be the heel, and having the babyface eliminate the hardworking heel is a little bit of a weird dynamic. That honestly, that's nitpicking. I'm absolutely nitpicking here. I think it was a good choice. The storyline that they would tell after that took a while to get going. If you remember the whole I have to finish the story and the storyline against Roman Reigns really only got going after Elimination Chamber. So they only had like 3.5 weeks to really build this, and they did a fantastic job in those 3.5 weeks. I am going to put this into the good category. Rhea Ripley winning was absolutely fantastic. Also going the distance from number 1, which now at this point just doesn't really seem like a fantastic feat because a whole bunch of people at this point has already done it. Still, I think it's a super important feat, and she's the first woman to ever do it. On top of that, when I look at the field of that year's Women's Royal Rumble match, she was absolutely far and away the best choice to go on to win the Royal Rumble match. And then on top of that, she would go on to have a fantastic WrestleMania match with Charlotte, a WrestleMania match, which was one of my favorite matches of the year. But if you remember, a WrestleMania match with like no story whatsoever. They like barely built that up. And that is one of my biggest complaints about that. Honestly, aside from that, I don't really have that many complaints because this was yes, she had already won championships, and yes, she'd been in that like top tier list of women when it comes to the main event scene. However, this catapulted her to that other echelon with the likes of Bianca Belair, with the likes of Becky Lynch and Charlotte. It really helped her separate herself from the bunch there. I think this was a phenomenal idea to have her win the Royal Rumble. I think she's been a great Royal Rumble winner. She goes right beside Bianca Belair into the great category. Okay, that was a long one. Hopefully you enjoyed it. This is where you get to tell me what you think I got wrong. Again, the comment section here is a safe place, so go ahead and let me know what you think. But that's it. I'm done. Get out of here.